Awakened once more, the ancient Iconian gateways are rewriting the map of the galaxy, and nowhere more than in the new frontier. A century ago, the Imperial Thelonians separated two feuding alien races, the Aerons and the Marcanians, depositing each of them on a new world safely distant from that of their ancestral enemies. Now, the gateways have made it possible for the long-dormant blood feud to begin anew. Aided by two mysterious aliens, each with a gateway device, the two enemies battle over the planet Cinque. Captain Mackenzie Calhoun of the USS Excalibur and his wife, Captain Elizabeth Shelby of the USS Trident, find themselves fighting a losing battle to keep the horrific violence from escalating, when they're suddenly transported by an energy field to a planet of ice where they face certain death. The only thing that might save them is that there is a gateway on the frozen planet. And now, the continuation of the Gateways saga, Star Trek New Frontier, Death After Life, by Peter David. Mackenzie Calhoun, captain of the Excalibur, was so cold that it took his body long minutes to realize that he was once again in warmth. Calhoun had practically forgotten what it was like to breathe without 1,000 needles jabbing in his chest. He was so dazed, so confounded, that he had to make the effort to reorder events in his mind so that he could recall how he'd come to this pass. The cold had been so overwhelming that for what seemed an endless period of time, he couldn't think of anything beyond that. There had been cold and blistering winds that would have flayed the skin from his body if he'd been out there much longer. Cold and bodies. Two bodies. Yes, the aliens, both dead, lying there, face up in the snow, mere feet away from the Great Gateway. They had caused trouble, so much trouble for two races, for himself, for Shelby. Now, Calhoun lay there, flat on his back, arms and legs splayed, trying to put together the pieces of his body and the pieces of his life. The ground hard and gritty beneath him, the heat of an unknown sun pounding down upon him, his extremities starting to tingle with a resurgence of blood circulating to them, and that was when he remembered Shelby. His wife, Elizabeth Paula Shelby, captain of the good ship Trident, had been swept away along with him to the frozen world that had, for a time at least, promised to be their final resting place. She'd been there with another man. Yes, it was starting to come back to him. A man named Ibose, leader of a people called what? The Marcanians. Yes, that was right. Ibose of the Marcanians. He'd wound up on the wasted frozen world along with Shelby. Then they'd fallen into a crevasse, and Shelby survived, but Ibose didn't. Simple as that. Shelby had been unconscious in his arms. He had cradled her, like a groom, delicately transporting his bride over the threshold on their wedding night. But there'd been nothing remotely romantic about it. She'd been unconscious, freezing in his arms, injured from her fall and the frostbite. And he held her as if he could will his own body heat into her in order to save her. It hadn't worked. Calhoun had spat out curse after curse, cried out against the unfairness of their circumstances, had simply refused to believe that it was going to end there, on some nameless ice world who knew where. Then he heard a voice from nearby, rough and hard and disinterested in hearing any sort of griping of any sort. "Life isn't fair. Deal with it." At first he didn't recognize it, and then it came to him, roared toward him with the ferocity of a star exploding in fiery nova. "Father?" The shock was too much, because Mackenzie Calhoun realized that he was dead. That was all, just dead, because his murdered father was speaking to him, and he'd never really made it through the planet of ice at all. It had all been some sort of cruel joke, and at that moment, he and Elizabeth were lying on the planet's surface, becoming crusted over with sleet and snow. Even as he was half sitting up, Calhoun fell back without ever having opened his eyes. He struck his head hard on the barren and crusty ground beneath him, but never felt it. And so died Mackenzie Calhoun, without ever having a chance to see the sunset. Mackenzie Calhoun, captain of the Excalibur, was so cold that it took his body long minutes to realize that he was once again in warmth. As he lay there, flat on his back, trying to put together the pieces of his body and the pieces of his life, he remembered Shelby.
Epi.
For a moment, he wanted to surrender to despair, to dwell upon how unfair all of this was. But whoever claimed life was fair in the first place? Certainly not Calhoun. Certainly not his father, the man from whom he'd learned so much. The man who had died, broken in body but not in spirit, by soldiers representing an oppressive race whom the young Calhoun had eventually driven off his world. If he were here right now, Calhoun realized he'd be telling his son to stop lying about and dwelling upon his unfair lot in life. He was still alive, after all, and that was all that was important.
Get up. Your wife needs you. On your feet, damn you, if you be a man.
Why was he thinking about his father? The air of his surroundings was warm in his chest as he drew in great lungs full of it. Slowly, he sat up. He opened his eyes and immediately squinted against the brightness of the sun, and there Epi was, miraculously, sitting up a few feet away from him on the parched ground. She'd probably never looked quite as awful in her entire life, and she never looked quite as good to Calhoun as she did at that moment. "Hey, Mac." Calhoun wasn't looking at her. He was looking through her, around her. Astoundingly, all the pain, all the hurt, all the stress that his body had been through was instantly forgotten. His legs were strong and firm again, blood pumping through them as if they were the legs of a 20-year-old. It only made sense, Calhoun realized. She had not, after all, been conscious when they went through the gateway. The last thing she had known was that they were upon a nameless ice world with death imminent. Shelby staggered to her feet. "Mac, where are we? It seems familiar, but I'm not sure." "You've been here, but you haven't been here." "Neither have I." Calhoun studied the castle-like structures that dotted the horizon. The towers were tall, powerfully built. They had been carved right out of the cliffs of solid rock. Calhoun had looked upon similar structures in his youth, called keeps, but they had always been silent and empty, a mute testimony to more ancient times when such fortresses provided great measures of security. Along the bottom ridge of the fortress was an array of tents. "Mac, where are we?" "Xenex." He couldn't quite believe it until he actually said it. She shook her head in bewilderment. "Your homeworld? Xenex?" He nodded. "Yeah, I think so, yes." "Mac, how the hell did we get to Xenex?" "A gateway. There was a huge one on the ice world, much bigger than either of those transportable devices that the aliens had. It was activated, and I took us through there to here." He was so focused on his environment that he started slightly when Shelby stepped right in front of him. "Mac, there's more going on here than that. It's as if you're in full battle mode, like you're detecting an immediate threat. What's going on? I have a right to know, a right to be as prepared as you." He drew in a deep breath of air to confirm that which he'd already surmised. "There's been fighting. I can smell it. There's blood in the air. Blood and death." "Mac, really? And what does that smell like?" "Smells like chicken. What do you think it smells like?" "I don't know, Mac. I never noticed blood having a particular scent, and death is more concept to me than something definable by one's nose." He took a step toward her, looking down at her, and he felt a looming darkness behind his eyes. "That, Epi, is because you've never been up to your elbows in it." "Screw you, Calhoun. Maybe I wasn't a teenage warlord hacking my way through corpses stacked 5 feet high, but I had a starship and crew dying around me when I fought the Borg, so don't tell me what I know and don't know, all right?" "Fair enough. So come on. Where?" He pointed to the fortress in the distance. There, the keep. They started walking. Somewhere along the way, Calhoun reached over and took Shelby's hand. It felt warm and comforting, and not only that, but he couldn't believe how quickly and thoroughly he'd recovered from near death. Even more remarkable was Shelby's recovery. They crossed the plain, approaching the mountainous area where the keep was ensconced. Little clouds of dust were kicked up under their feet. He abruptly turned to her. "The sun's setting." She blinked. "So, suns do that. At least once a day, as I recall." But Calhoun shook his head, racking his brain, trying to remember. "There's more to it, though. I remember the sun starting to set. I think. Didn't see it through, though." She sighed. "Mac, I don't know why a gateway would drop us on Xenex. I don't know why I'm feeling so completely recovered in such a short period of time. But what I do know is that together we can handle just about anything." A sudden explosion froze Shelby and Calhoun in their tracks, and they looked ahead to the keep. One of the lower sections erupted in flame. Another section of the keep exploded, and people fell off the parapets, arms pinwheeling as if they were hoping they could grab handholds from the very air. Calhoun yanked on Shelby's hand. "Come on." She stayed where she was, looking at him incredulously. "You want to head towards that? You're crazy. We're not budging." Calhoun heard it, smelled it before he actually saw it. A giant flaming mass of burning slag descending from overhead, a misfire from a catapult that was falling well short of its target, namely the keep. It was, however, descending right toward the two Starfleet officers. Even as Calhoun pulled Shelby with him to try and get clear of it, he knew in his heart it was too late. The slag crushed their bodies and obliterated them. And so died Mackenzie Calhoun and Elizabeth Shelby without ever having a chance to see the sun set. Together, we can handle just about anything. A sudden explosion froze Shelby and Calhoun in their tracks, and they looked ahead to the keep. One of the lower sections erupted in flame. Another section of the keep exploded, and people fell off the parapets, arms pinwheeling as if they were hoping they could grab handholds from the very air. Calhoun yanked on Shelby's hand. "Come on." She stayed where she was, looking at him incredulously. "You want to head towards that? You're crazy. We're not budging." But Calhoun hauled her forward. Shelby was knocked off her feet by the impact of some sort of flaming mass of... She had no idea what. All she did know was that it had crashed to the ground right where they had been standing. Mac, that was a close call." "I was thinking the same thing, Epi. Come on." They pounded across the plains toward the battle. "Mac, why are we running toward the site of the battle?" "Because it's better than being out in the open, and the keep is returning fire. See?" He was right. From the upper reaches, a catapult-like device had appeared, and they were dispatching giant flaming wads of whatever at their still unseen aggressors. They ran toward the keep, and although a couple of the flaming masses of whatever the hell they were landed near them, nothing came as close as that earlier one had. They were drawing within close range of the defenders in the upper reaches of the keep, and the defenders were pointing at them now. For an instant, Shelby was extremely concerned. What if these people took Calhoun to be an enemy and opened fire on him? And Calhoun was slowing down, looking at the defenders in wonderment. It can't be. Mac and Shelby spun just in time to see a horde of Xenexians pouring over a ridge, charging full bore toward the keep. Shelby remembered that Calhoun had once told her throughout the course of his world there had never been any sort of civil war amongst his people. But what else could one possibly call this? Mac, we've got to get out of here." But even as she said it, she realized there was nowhere to go. The two sides were converging, with Shelby and Calhoun right in the middle, and there was no escape. Calhoun charged the men coming in behind them. Calhoun grabbed the head of one man with both hands, twisted once, and snapped his neck. Calhoun screamed at her.
Get behind me!
It was nothing short of butchery as Calhoun hacked and slashed like a bladed windmill. At the last second, she saw that someone had worked their way behind Calhoun and was coming at them. Suddenly, the tip of a blade brushed against her back, causing her to jump away. That was when she realized, with a deep horror, that the blade had actually come right through Calhoun's body, driven through from the other side. She whirled just as Calhoun fell against her, coughing up blood. She sank to her knees, cradling him. She felt a pinch at her back, a pain, and suddenly she saw a blade protruding from between her breasts. Just missed the heart. That was lucky, she thought. Amazingly lucid even as her upper body jerked when the blade was yanked clear. Calhoun finally managed to get out the strangest words. "You're all dead. How can you be here when you're all dead?" And that was certainly enough to confuse the hell out of her. Then the crowd of warriors seemed to separate, making way for someone. He was a burly man with a strong chin, evident even though he had a beard, and wild black hair tinged with gray. Shelby's chest was on fire. You murdering bastards. Why?" The burly man pointed a sword at Calhoun.
He knows why, don't you, son?
Calhoun managed to nod. But Shelby didn't understand at all. All she knew at that moment was that her one wish was not to die in ignorance. Calhoun's father spoke to her.
"Welcome to Kazuhira."
And Shelby didn't get her wish. The last thing she saw, just before she died, was the sun setting. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, and she hoped that Calhoun, at least, had had a chance to see it as well. Calhoun awoke in a tent to sunlight on his face. The tent flaps had been pushed aside, and his father's frame filled the door. Calhoun stood slowly, unsteady on his legs. "Father?" Graazi of Calhoun, father of Ma'akaenzi of Calhoun, sized up his son and did not seem to be especially approving of what he saw. He squeezed Calhoun's biceps and shook his head.
By this age, your muscles should be hard as rock by now. Too busy surrounding yourself with weapons and security men to stay as fit as you should be. Well, what do you have to say for yourself?
I'm sorry, sir. Graazi's face broke in a wide smile.
Well, it will have to do then. You did last long enough to see a sunset, and that, as you know, entitles you to an eternity of sunrises.
Suddenly, overwhelmed by emotion, Calhoun took a step toward Graazi, his arms wide. But immediately his father retreated, his face darkening.
Are you insane? About to embrace me? Me? Has this federation of yours made you softer than I thought?
No, sir.
Good, because this is Kazuhira, my son. Such delicate emotions are inappropriate here. For that matter, I'm concerned about the female you came with.
Shelby?
If that is her name, aye. The simple fact is that she may not fit in here, Ma'akaenzi. She may not fit in here at all.
Immediately, Calhoun pushed past his father into the sun and skidded to a halt. Elizabeth Shelby was lying flat. Her arms and legs flopped about like a stringless puppet. There was a sword lying near her, having just slipped out of her lifeless hand. Standing over her was a burly master-at-arms, gripping a sword still dripping with blood. He turned to Calhoun.
Slow learner, but she'll get the hang of it.
Calhoun did not hesitate. He simply picked up her fallen sword, turned it around, and ran himself through with it.
This is Kazuhira, my son. Such delicate emotions are inappropriate here. For that matter, I'm concerned about the female you came with.
Shelby?
If that is her name, aye. The simple fact is that she may not fit in here, Ma'akaenzi. She may not fit in here at all.
Calhoun suddenly knew, beyond any question, as sure as he had ever known anything, that Shelby was in mortal danger. He dashed outside and skidded to a halt. Shelby was standing there with a bloody sword clenched in her hands and a look of pure fury on her face. Facing her was the Master at Arms, minus one of those arms. Calhoun's father looked at her approvingly.
Then again, son, perhaps she'll fit right in.
Shelby gasped, unsure of what to say or do, at which point Calhoun walked to her quickly and pulled her away. Shelby's face was turning the color of paste. Mac! Mac! What's happening? What's... We're in Kazahara. She whirled and gripped him by the shoulders. Where the hell is Kazahara? He let out a slow breath and tried to figure out the best way to explain what was essentially inexplicable. Does the name Valhalla mean anything to you? She frowned, racking her brain. It's, that place, Norse mythology, where the warrior women lived, the Valkyries. And they'd come and bring fallen warriors to this place, this hall of dead heroes. And that was Valhalla. She looked around at the foreboding landscape, cutting him off before he could continue. Are you telling me we're in the Xenexian version of Valhalla? More or less, yes. The big guy who came out of the tent I was in. That's my father. She was silent for a moment when he told her that. Mac, I know losing your father at a young age was traumatic for you. But what? What are you implying? That I'm imagining it? Epi, Kazahara is where Xenexian heroes, cut down in battle, go to die. When you first arrive, you have to survive to see your first sunset. If you don't, you keep going back to the point where you left off, and once you've done that, you awaken every morning to a day of warfare and battle, and it doesn't matter if you get hurt or if you die, because come the sunset, the day ends, and the next morning you wake up, and it's a new day. She smiled in a way that looked, to Calhoun, like it was just shy of patronizing. I see, Mac. And why, just out of curiosity, did all those men attack you? I mean, you were their warlord once upon a time, right? Calhoun scratched his chin. Taking a guess, they're probably carrying grudges. I mean, yes, I led Xenex to freedom ultimately, but I also led a lot of them to their deaths. She shook her head with amusement. Mac, it's ridiculous. We can't be someplace that's not real. And what's next, Mac, Maybe we'll find our way back to the gateway, jump through and find ourselves in heaven, face to face with God. Is that what this is about, Epi? You have trouble believing in higher powers, and as a consequence, all this is too much for you to cope with. I cope with being your wife, Calhoun. That's enough coping for one lifetime. He stepped in close to her. How about an eternity of lifetimes, Epi? Because that's what we've got here. And finally, he stomped away, incensed over Shelby's refusal to accept what he was telling her. He didn't notice the freshly dug ambush pit until it was a millisecond too late. As he plunged, with the jagged, sharpened stones rushing to meet him, he cursed Epi with his dying breath and wondered how many times he'd made that curse. How about an eternity of lifetimes, Epi? Because that's what we've got here. And finally, he stomped away, incensed over Shelby's refusal to accept what he was telling her. At that moment, Shelby felt a sudden warning in her head. It was enough to make her cry out, as if his life depended on it. Mac! He stopped, but remained with his back to her. She walked quickly to him. What's going on here, Mac? In the distance, she saw the Xenexians going through training maneuvers. For all she knew, another wave of opponents would come charging from across the way at any time. And why not? That's what it was all about, after all, wasn't it? Endless strife, endless battle. Mac, I think you want to stay. I think it's damned attractive to you. No rules, because they don't matter. There's nothing that says the gateways can actually take us to otherworldly spheres. We're trapped in some sort of other dimensional limbo, perhaps. It's a spatial equivalent of a holodeck. Calhoun began getting really angry at her. Why is it so damned impossible for you to believe? I've been hearing stories of Kazuhira, believed in it since as early as I can remember. And I heard about the 100-acre woods, Mac, but I'm not going in search of Winnie the Pooh. All of this, it's not real. We have to leave. He looked at her defiantly. If this is being formed by our mutual delusion, why is it only someplace that I'm familiar with? Because, Mac, I believe in you more than I believe in anything in this world, or the next. Think about where we just came from, how we got here. He was looking at her blankly, and she thought, oh, my God, he really doesn't remember. He's got amnesia or something. Mac, two races, the Aarons and the Marcanians, who were engaged in a centuries-long battle, battling over their own version of paradise, a planet called Sinke, and their battle of mutual extermination was aided by two aliens, each with their own gateway devices. We all wound up on Sinke, only to discover the planet was a desolate wasteland, thanks to generations of fighting that had gone on previously. Calhoun nodded briskly and continued for her. Yes, and then both aliens turned on their gateways and it created some sort of force whirlpool that sucked us into the ice planet, where the gigantic gateway was waiting for us. And why are you telling me all this when I already know it? She stepped away from him and looked around at the vast plain instead. Rocks and craggy areas nearby them, and the endless vista of nothingness. Maybe you're right, Mac. Maybe I'm afraid to believe in the reality of this place, because then it implies that other things I'm not comfortable with, might also be real. He looked at her with confusion. Why not comfortable? Because, Mac, things like heaven or angels or God, these are things that are, by definition, unknowable. I don't accept the concept of unknowable. If mankind can't discover it, learn from it, what's the point of it? To her surprise, he laughed gently, and she took his hands in hers. Mac, before, I was trying to make you realize that endless fighting is a useless way to spend one's life. It doesn't matter whether you're Marcanian or Xenexian. Do you get what I'm saying? Because whether you get it or not, I'm leaving. Leaving? Even if we manage to retrace our steps, all the gateway will do is put us right back out onto the ice world. Maybe we'll be rescued. Not a lot of time to be rescued in, Epi. More likely we'll die. She shrugged. Well then, maybe I'll get to explore the whole heaven thing after all. She stood on her toes, kissed him lightly on the cheek, and turned and started to walk away. He called out to her. Epi, you're asking me to give up everything I believe in order to be with you. And if we go back and we die together, I'd likely wind up back here, and you would be wherever. She stopped, turned, and smiled. I guess that's what Till Death Do Us Part is all about, isn't it, Mac? Calhoun let out a heavy sigh and began walking toward her. Till death do us part, Epi. And with a cry of joy that was slightly choked, Shelby ran to him and threw herself into his arms. But from behind them came the gruff voice of Mac's father.
Is this what you've come to, then?
They turned, and Graazi was standing there, the mustache under his nose bristling, his purple eyes dark and furious as the sea. His hand was twitching near the great sword that hung from his hip. He spoke angrily to his son.
A chance to be with me, to be with your own kind, and you throw it all away to run off with her? You would place love above the glory of battle? Have you no priorities?
I have mine, Father, and you have yours. His father turned angrily away.
You're no son of mine.
No son of yours? Everything I did on Xenex, I did in your memory. Every Xanter bastard I cut down with my sword, I did so avenging your death. I freed a planet on your behalf, And if that isn't good enough to earn your approval in the afterlife, then to hell with you. Graazi froze for a long moment, and then turned without another word and strode away. Shelby placed a feather-light hand on his arm. Mac, are you okay? I'm fine. Let's get out of here. They moved quickly across the plains, no words exchanged between them. Calhoun led the way, scanning the ground. I'm reasonably certain that if we follow this path, Shelby interrupted, or we could just head for the gateway. She pointed ahead of them, and there, sure enough, was a glowing in the air. It was a distance away, but it was unmistakable. The gateway. Suddenly, the ground below them began to rumble. They looked behind themselves to see a horde of angry warriors coming after them, shouting Calhoun's name. And the gateway was fading, about to cycle shut. They'd be trapped in Kazahara forever. They tried to run, but within moments, they were cut to pieces, and the ground ran red with their blood. And the gateway was fading, about to cycle shut. They'd be trapped in Kazahara forever. They tried to run, but within moments, they were cut to pieces, and the ground ran red with their blood. And the gateway was fading, about to cycle shut. They'd be trapped in Kazahara forever. They tried to run, but within moments, they were surrounded. Unstoppable, Graazi cut a path to Calhoun and Shelby, and the others fell back, confused and angry. Calhoun looked up at the dark face of his father. I thought you said I wasn't a son of yours.
Yes, well, I realize that sometimes you're more your mother's son, and I loved her dearly. But she was no warrior. I miss her terribly, as much as I'll miss you. Go, damn you.
He shoved Calhoun as hard as he could. Shelby caught him and they ran. Graazi was everywhere, as was his sword, and no man passed as Calhoun and Shelby sprinted the remaining distance. Calhoun gripped Shelby's hand as tightly as he could, and together, they leaped through the gateway. Calhoun heard his father cry out.
This has been a good day.
And the sun set on Kazahara. One moment they were bathed in warmth, and the next the wind and ice was hammering them with the force of 1,000 nails. Calhoun went down, Shelby tumbling on top of him. He clutched her to him, and when he looked at her, his heart sank in dismay. While in Kazahara he had healed, but here, back in this marvelous real world to which she'd been so anxious to return, she was as banged up and bruised as before they'd gone through the gateway. What kind of miracle was it when all it did was spare them a quick death in exchange for a slower and more agonizing one? Then he looked at Shelby, who was gazing up at him, unable to move, barely able to speak, and he understood. It was a miracle because it was giving them a few last moments together, and any time that they were together was miraculous. They kissed passionately, holding each other close, icing over, the gateway silent behind them. And then, in his near-death delirium, Calhoun wondered whether Valkyries were descending from Valhalla. He managed to barely roll over, and saw with distant astonishment that a long-range shuttlecraft was approaching. Before he passed out, Calhoun wondered, what do Valkyries need with a shuttlecraft? When Shelby opened her eyes, she saw Calhoun smiling down at her, felt the distinctly unglacial warmth around her, and for just a moment she thought, "You bastard, you brought us back through the gateway. We're back in your idea of paradise. Here we go again." And then she heard a familiar voice, brisk with efficiency.
Step aside, please, Captain.
Calhoun did so, and then Dr. Sellar was standing over her, guiding a medical tricorder along her and nodding approvingly.
Full circulation has been restored.
Shelby immediately sat up. An instant later, the world spun around her and she flopped back. The only thing that prevented her from cracking her head badly was Calhoun's arm catching her as she fell. It was at that point that Shelby realized they were in a shuttlecraft. She looked up at Calhoun in confusion, her face a question. Easily reading her mind, Calhoun took her hand.
Back on Cinque, our respective science officers managed to recreate the energy field that hauled us through to the ice world. Once they did that, they sent a shuttlecraft through after us.
Shelby looked concerned.
But how will we get back from here? Back through the energy field?
Calhoun smiled.
No need to worry. We're only 3 days out of Thelonian space.
Dr. Cellar nodded.
You were very fortunate.
And with that, the Vulcan headed toward the front of the craft, leaving Shelby and Calhoun alone in the rear section. Shelby squeezed Calhoun's hand tightly.
Any regrets, Mac?
He smiled.
I'll tell you after I'm dead.
And for a moment, just a brief moment, she thought that she saw pain and a longing for something he now knew he could never have or never be happy with. But then, just like that, it was gone.